All right, our first guest is an actor, director, and producer. His projects include Arctic, not Arctic, Dementia Part 2, Bliss, Beyond the Gates, All the Creatures Were Stirring, and Contracted 1 and 2. Welcome, Matt Mercer. What's up, Matt?
What's going on, Christian? How's it going? It's good to see you.
It's going all right, man. I think we're getting out of this whole quarantine stuff, aren't we?
It seems that way.
Getting
I mean,
close.
getting there. I mean, it's hard to tell what's going to happen here. I know with the protests and everything happening lately, it seems like cases are sort of on the rise again. But here in LA, they are obviously reopening a lot of things this weekend. They're reopening gyms, restaurants, entertainment venues. So I guess we'll see what happens. It makes me a little nervous, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. I don't know if I'm going to be going anywhere.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of try to stay in as much as possible still.
Yeah.
But I did go out and do some protesting and documenting of the protests and the aftermath of all of the kind of the rioting that happened on Fairfax and Melrose.
Same. That's actually where I was. I was at the first the first protest at Pan Pacific, and then did some cleanup after that. And yeah, it's pretty amazing what's going on right now.
Yeah, so since I did not go to that it was a last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago, right?
Yeah.
Is that when it was?
Right.
So and then I went out to Melrose on that Sunday, and I ended up kind of documenting things. It was like the first time we were starting to see the boards going up and all of that, at least on my end. And so I was documenting all the tagging that people were doing on buildings, and ended up kind of just taking photos of this one storefront, and one of the glass windows had shattered and came down, and I ended up helping the guy with his glass, and just hung out with him for the next 7 hours. And he had stayed there that night and fought off looters, and so kind of heard his story and kind of try to figure out how to help him make sure that he's fortified for the next night, just in case something did happen again. But by that time, they already had military people to watch over that street.
Yeah, I think it was in that particular area, so like around the Grove and like Third and Fairfax, the only day where there was spray painting, graffiti, and any kind of looting or destruction was that first one. And, most of these protests have been very peaceful and ordered, and you would never know that from what the media is showing half the time.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about that day. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went early that day, and it was very orderly and very peaceful, and I left before there were cars on fire and things like that. But
yeah,
I think what I was going to say before is I think the media coverage is important, and it's really important that everyone who's going to these protests are taking videos too, because that's where we've gotten to see a lot of the police violence against the protesters that's just completely unmerited. So I think all that is really important. It works both ways. Some of the time, though, the media has been just showing a lot of the looting and not showing a lot of the positivity that's been happening. So, but I think overall these protests are fantastic, and I really am. It's great that they're continuing. Like every day, there's something going on. There's one this weekend starting at Hollywood and Highland that I'm going to go to. So.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
Maybe we can see each other at that point. Cause right down the street. So that's Saturday then.
Yeah, that's starting on Saturday. I can send you the info.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think Pride in West Hollywood is happening Sunday, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, we gotta look into that. But if you're in LA, look up that stuff and make sure to join. And I tried to do a couple of different areas. So like this past Saturday, I went downtown LA, and I saw cops lining up to like push people away. There wasn't anything physical I didn't see, but it was kind of a free for all. It was a lot less because I recorded some looting on the Monday or Sunday after the Melrose ones, it was 2 days after that, and that was like, it was fairly intense, and cops getting close, but I didn't see any cop violence I just saw looters
Right.
and then protesters stopping looters, which was really impressive.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that some people are taking advantage of some of these protests that start very peacefully, but
Yeah.
you know, get a
By the
mixed
time
bag of
this,
people out there.
yeah, to take advantage of it, I guess that's
Yeah.
how they're seeing it, and it's putting a bad light on what the good is happening in the whole situation. So
Yeah, which is mostly what it is this is mostly an incredibly positive thing that's happening. And
mhm.
I think, more than ever right now, we're seeing a lot of people wake up to systemic racism, and it's
Yeah,
important.
yeah, to learn,
Uh,
open your ears and learn and hear from other people that don't look like you.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Well, mhm.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I just want to say thanks for having me on. Not to abruptly shift the topic, but
Oh,
thanks for having me on as your co-host, and I'm really excited to talk about The Hills Run Red later on. This is very
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. So, and what have you? And I assume you're a fan of The Hills Run Red, then.
I am. I did. I really liked it when it came out, and I like, Dave's a friend of mine,
Mhm.
obviously, and I love the movie, but I hadn't seen it in a while,
Yep.
and revisiting it, rewatched it last night, and revisiting it, I was really fun, and I forgot what a like big movie it is, especially considering like such a simple concept that's really well executed, and it's a big movie. And I was like, oh, there's like helicopter shots, and there's a couple of jump scares in it that legitimately scared me,
Yeah.
which I will get to when we talk about it. We have to talk about that now. I'll save it, but there's a couple things in it that are just dynamite, been
Yeah.
very atmospheric.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it since it came out as well, so I watched
Yeah.
it last night myself to kind of reacquaint myself. So,
Yeah.
uh, so before we jump in with those guys, I know
Yeah.
you had directed a music video recently. What was that? What was the band? And tell me about that. I know I
Yeah.
saw it. It was great.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for watching
A
it.
few
Yeah,
months ago,
it's
whenever it came out, or like recently, it was about a month or two ago, right?
Yeah, I want to say it was a month and a half, 2 months
Yeah.
ago. Got it right before quarantine started, and it's been hard to find stuff to do. I mean, lately I've just been kind of jobbing because of the situation right now. It's hard to find work, and I've been taking whatever I can get.
Mhm.
Like right now, I'm just like editing casting reels for a reality show. But yeah, the last project I did, I hadn't gotten behind the camera since Dementia 2, which was a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I was just champing at the bit to make something. And a friend of mine, Ben Wise, is the artist, and
Okay.
he had a new album coming out, and he's done me massive favors in the past. He's written a couple of songs to work as source cues in films I've made. Actually, one of them isn't even a source cue. In a short I made called Feeding Time, he did like the closing credits song it's just
Uh,
absolutely dynamite. And I always told him, if one day I had directed a music video for another band he was in a long time ago, and I said, if there's another instance I can do this, I would love to.
uh-huh.
So sort of toward the end of last year, he asked me if I wanted to make a video for one of the songs on the album, and he picked this song called Rack and Ruin, which is a super cool song. It's got kind of I mean, you listen to it. It has kind of a
Yeah.
80s, early 90s rock vibe to it, with kind of a Phil Collins sort of beat.
Yeah.
And the original, I was like, yeah, I'd love to do it because I just want to make something.
Hmm.
And the COVID thing had just started, and when we were starting to put it together, and I was like, gosh, we got to do this. We got to do this now.
Yeah.
We're we're going to be on lockdown soon. And I had also the original concept. Ben and I had been tossing around concepts, and I wanted to make sure he was going to be happy with it because it's his song, and I wanted it to represent the song. And the
Hmm.
first concept was this like epic sci-fi sort of concept where some of it would shoot in the desert and some of it was on a beach, and it was too much. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, when he kind of told me what the budget was that he had, things always end up tighter and smaller than you think they're going to be.
Hmm.
And this was like, we just had very little to work with. And I was like, all right, how can I take the sort of broader idea I had and consolidate it into a room with one person? And so
Yes.
that's what it
Yeah.
ended up being. It went from this sci-fi epic to this sort of 70s paranoid thriller is kind of what I went for.
Uh-huh.
Um, watched like The Conversation, some of those films like that from the 70s. And basically, this room that I'm in now is just my home office. I just got a bunch of old tape recorders and different equipment and just tried to decorate it like a surveillance room.
Yes, yeah.
I
I
would
remember
have.
there's TVs and stuff in it, right? Some strange things going on with TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's the surveillance monitors and a couple of
yeah.
old recorders from the 60s, including a beautiful old Nagra that my friend Brian let me borrow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that thing was gorgeous and worked. It was amazing. In fact, it had something recorded on it. What was it? Like an old Led Zeppelin recording on it or something on the
Oh,
tape that was on it. But anyway, yeah, I just made a $2 set here in my office, and we just kind of and I did a quick beat sheet of different ideas, and my friend, I was like, who's someone we can kind of make look Gene Hackman-esque, like in the conversation, and my buddy
yeah.
Nick Bush, he's one of the best actors I know, and we threw a fake mustache on him and just started running around this room shooting it from every angle we could. And it's tough to make something in a room feel not repetitive, but I think we did okay. It's a fun video, and I'm proud of it. So that was the last thing I made, and otherwise I've just been editing, taking whatever editing jobs I can get, and writing. And the only other thing I have on the horizon is my buddy Mike Teston, who co-directed Dementia 2 with me.
Oh, yeah.
He directed a movie called Browse, which is coming out July 7th, and I have a small role in that, where I get to tell off, or not tell off, but I get to be an asshole to Lucas Haas.
Oh, nice.
A fun scene, which I was so nervous about, because I grew up loving Lucas Haas. I was like, oh, I got to be an asshole to Lucas Haas. This will be fun.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
being an actor and living out your fantasies of even if they aren't fantasies,
Right. It wasn't a fan. I was actually really nervous because he's a super nice guy and a great actor. And I remember our first take, I was like, oh, I can't remember my lines because I have to be mean to Lucas Haas. But it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah. So, all right, let's bring in Dave and Sean, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back in. We're bringing in our second co-host for the day. You all know him as the editor-in-chief of the official Halloween movies website. It is Sean Decker. What's up, Sean?
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
How you guys doing today?
And oh, go ahead, Sean. What were you saying?
Just like Chris is just my personal PR person.
Yeah, I'm here.
He gets about a $5 stipend a month. That's it. That's all I can afford.
All right, so, and then our guest of honor today, we all saw him burst onto the scene, I think in 2000 or so, with the full moon feature, The Dead Hate the Living, which I love, and I'm sure if you've ever seen it, you love as well. He eventually went on to direct the Sweet Tooth episode of Tales from Halloween, and the experimental thriller It Watches. Right now, we are celebrating the Blu-ray release of his badass movie that came out 2008 or 9 or so, The Hills Run Red.
Red.
The first time it's on Blu-ray, and so welcome, Dave Parker.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Dave.
Hey.
How you doing, buddy?
Good to see everyone. Good to see everyone. It's been too long.
Yeah, so we have two guys here that like Halloween, and one guy that likes or favorite horror movie is Halloween, and Dave is Creepshow. So it's we have the Halloween battle today.
I'm like first off, and not to sound all pedantic or whatever, and like, oh, Dave, I love you, but I do as a friend.
Yeah.
But I love this movie. The Hills Run Red. When this movie came out in 2009, I was literally blown away by it. Obviously, we're all friends, Scow, you. But that's the subversive nature that the two of you brought to this picture. I actually loved, and I mean, I've always been kind of like shepherding this movie, like, oh my God, The Hills Run Red. It's like one of my favorite slasher films ever made, and also I think one of the most underrated slasher films ever made. So to be able to see it getting a new life on Blu-ray with all these extras, I'm super excited for.
No one was more really kind of shocked than I was that they were actually going to do it, because I just never thought that it was going to happen, and I didn't expect Scream Factory to be the one. I figured maybe at best, Warner Archive would just throw it out on Blu-ray as like an on-demand make Blu-ray or something, but to be able to get the opportunity to do this and put so many extra features on it, and kind of be like the final word on the movie, I think, at least in physical media form, since that's all sort of changing.
Right.
That's been really great. It is a more packed collector's edition that is not a collector's edition than most of their collector's editions. So,
And so is this a new transfer? Is it? Tell us about the transfer.
It's an HD transfer of the movie, coming from the digital realm, because they never made a print of the movie, even though we shot on 35, but there was never a print made. So it's first time on Blu-ray digital transfer. 6.5 hours of extra features, most of which have never been seen before or heard before, because we have 2 new commentaries, one with Patrick Bromley, who works on dailydead.com and does F This Movie, that podcast, and he like Sean has been a big champion of the movie since it came out, which has always been very flattering. So I thought it would be really cool to have him do one, and then I did one because they were nice enough with Adam Green and Joe Lynch, just to just to stack it more in the favor of like, hey, if people like them, they can listen to them talk about this movie. So those are the 2 new commentaries. Then there is the original commentary, which is me, David Scow wrote the movie, and Robert Burnett, who was the producer.
Okay, and Sean, you were involved in helping with some of the behind the scenes, the recent ones, then, right?
It's another one of those crazy things with 2020, which that's a whole nother discussion. But right before we went into lockdown, Dave had reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do interviews for the new extras, some of the new extras on the disc. So I was lucky enough, and thank you, Dave. Such an enjoyable day to just get together with you and Scow and talk about this film and its evolution and its place in the slasher subgenre, which we did at Ariscope actually, and we also talked to Eric Olson, one of the producers on this movie, and Frederick Wiedemann,
Frederick Wiedemann, the composer.
The composer, and it was a really, God, that was just such an enjoyable day, and it seems strangely so long ago now, when it really wasn't.
It was like a week or so before the lockdown that we shot this. It was crazy. It was nuts. And that's the thing when so the disc itself has 10 featurettes that range from anywhere from 11 to almost 20 minutes that Robert Burnett did, and those were all from stuff that was shot when we made the movie 10, 11 years ago. And the interviews were done then. The thing was, I was never interviewed because I was busy directing the movie. I mean, I'm on it, but I never sat down and did a sit-down interview about the movie. Scow didn't, Freddie didn't. So anything that happened post-wise was never covered. So Rob took care of those 10, and then I did the ones that Sean was the interview on was an additional 3, which was me and David Scow together talking about the creation of the movie and how we met and how we got together and everything about it. Eric Olson, who was our main executive producer from Dark Castle Entertainment, and then the composer Freddie. Okay. So that alone is 13 featurettes that are, I gotta say, I come from this editing world. I'm an editor most of the time, and I've done a lot of these documentaries and either retrospectives for Scream Factory and for a bunch of other movies. These are not just here's the interview and here's a card with the question coming up. These are properly edited documentary featurettes. So and we cover and deal with, like I said before, it's really kind of the final word on this. We cover anything you could possibly want to know
Yeah,
it was a deep dive in regards to our conversations, which was, for me really, really fun because I've obviously known Dave and Parker like Scow and Parker for a long time. The two Daves, not to be confused.
Dave, yeah.
And me being a fan of the movie, have talked with both of them at length, just in private conversations. But for me, even as an interviewer on these extras, I found out a whole lot of stuff I didn't know about the making of this film. So it was just like super entertaining, for me personally to be able to conduct those interviews. So I can't wait. I mean, I haven't, Dave, thank you. It was very kind of you. Actually brought me a Blu-ray of Hills Run Red like 2 days ago, and I haven't had a chance to watch the extras as of yet, or the new transfer. So I'm looking forward to jumping in on that.
And it comes out this Tuesday. If anybody's, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but I'll mention it in the beginning.
Yeah. Tuesday, June 16th.
Yeah. Yeah. And before you get to it, I don't want to have you go too in depth on this.
Okay.
Because we want people to buy the disc and get the real story. But just give me a bit of the genesis. This was probably about 2006 or so that you started this project.
Yeah, I was working with Robert Burnett at his company Ludovico Technique, and
doing behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, we were working on the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Superman Returns at the time. Around that time, 2004 into 2005 into 2006, where this company on the New York, Fever Dreams, came out to the West Coast. They had done a couple movies on the East Coast. They wanted to meet with some directors on the West Coast. They had these two projects, these two scripts. They had The Hills Run Red, and they had this movie Wicked Lake, which which stars Sean's friend Carly Baker.
Yes.
So they met with a bunch of people. Most of them turned them down and said, "You should talk to Dave because he'd probably direct anything right about now." So because it'd been about, 6 years since The Dead Hate the Living. So so we read the scripts. The Hills Run Red script was a completely different beast than it is now. But it had the slasher character element in it, and I just took to it because I like that fact. Wicked Lake for me was a little too the script was a little too ugly. I think it plays a little more fun than I think the script read, so I wasn't really into that one. So we made our presentation. I had this artist, Michael Broom, really talented artist, do my version of what Babyface looked like and my concept of this stuff. Had notes on the script, did a presentation, and they went with us and allowed us to bring in Dave Scow, who's been a friend for a very long time, to rewrite the script and let us rewrite it from page one. I mean, they only had a couple things that they wanted in there. They had that they wanted it to be about this lost movie. They wanted the Babyface killer, and sort of the setting. So the sort of movie world type stuff they wanted in it. I was a little worried about that because my first one dealt with a lot of like sort of in movie stuff, and I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. But once we got David Scow involved, it was just sort of let him run free and go do what he wanted, because we knew it was going to be more to our liking than the original script was. So that's how it started. And then it was a progression of things to then get us to Warner Brothers. But all that stuff is covered in the retrospective, on all the docs. You'll get variations on that story. So
yeah, that's interesting. I was watching before I went to bed. I saw about half of Dead Hate the Living. I hadn't seen it in maybe 5-10 years or so, and I was realizing the parallels between the two, with all the inside film jokes, and it's just really fun stuff.
It was definitely unintentional, and for my part, I wanted to stray away from a lot of that because people like Dead Hate the Living. I'm hot and cold on it. It depends on the day. Yeah. There's some stuff that I really like about it. I thought Tom Calloway as the director of photography gave a very low budget movie a pretty good look. I thought for sure. I thought the zombies.
Yeah, Tom's great.
I thought that Tom Supernaut did, and the zombies were really were cool and different because they weren't just sort of generic zombies all around. But yeah, the whole film thing, it's just like, it's tricky, and it was one of those things that I was concerned with Hills, because I didn't want to feel like I was just diving into the same thing.
You weren't, though. I mean, it's got such a unique vibe to it, and I mean, the exciting thing about this re-release is more than likely a lot of people have not seen this film because it hasn't been available really digitally. And you're taking a film that's, in my estimation, like on a meta level, on like a redefinition of the slasher genre, and taking it in a completely different direction. I mean, it's up there for me with Scream, to be honest, in a way more dark, way more subversive manner, which given the fact that you and Scow had everything to do with it, is not surprising to me,
right?
at all. And I think the movie, there's a lot of gut punches in it. I mean, I think any horror fan out there is going to be really, really excited, not only about the narrative, but even the practical effects are just insane. I mean, this movie is very, very, very red. Very red.
I mean, I'll say this. I think you know what you're getting into from the opening credits.
Yeah, I do. You really do set the tone. And I hadn't watched it in a while, and I was saying to you before, like, the jump scares, I jumped twice during it. I don't give anything away, but there's well, I don't want to give it away.
There's two.
I'm not going to give it. There's two jump scares that really got me.
It's
awesome. Very effective, and yeah, it looks beautiful.
The weird thing is, and I don't know if any of you have actually gotten to experience it yet, but looking back on a movie that you made 10 years ago, one, you're hopefully, and I am, a completely different person than I was there, even sensibilities and experiences and everything else. It's a very strange thing to really go back and reflect intensively on something that you've done, especially for people who haven't seen the movie. And that's one of the exciting things. Like I said, I said in one of the documentaries, for the people who don't like the movie, I don't think it's going to change their mind. But it at least will give, thanks to Scream Factory and their presence and affection from genre fans, it will give people who just look at the cover and go, oh, it's a Hills Have Eyes ripoff, a chance to decide for themselves in the best way possible. So that part's really exciting. And then I was just going to say, going back to the opening, that it was just sort of an idea. It was never scripted as the opening of it for the credits and everything. And I was just like, well, we've got this footage. Let's do this. This will grab them. With all the sort of ratings things that we had against us with this movie, not even by the MPAA, not by the ratings board, I was shocked that they let us keep that. I really was. But I'm really happy for it, because in some ways it's, well, I mean, here's the thing. It's not like, oh, I'm such a genius. It's The Crow just done bloody. That scene is, I mean, Sean, there are shots.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And again, for any horror fan out there that's not looking to look, I'm not going to throw movies under the bus. I'm sure we all I Know What You Did Last Summer in some way or some shape, but this is not that film. This is an actual hard R movie, and hard R for a lot of the narrative elements in it, not just the gore. It's a smart film, which is one of the things that I really, really like about it. And the fan base certainly has, even though we haven't seen a re-release of this film in a larger format in some time, it's developed a cult following. I mean, you've got custom 1/6 scale model builders out there that are selling kits for $1,200 a piece.
No, it's amazing.
And I'm not going to say they're cranking out babyface characters. Those are those runs are super limited, but people recognize and respect and respond to
that character, especially
that character. Yeah.
Have you ever seen anyone like cosplay it or do it for Halloween?
I've seen people who've sent me photos that they've gone to conventions and cosplayed as Babyface, and they're really elaborate. And you go on eBay and people are replicating the necklace with the rattle. The rattle was a real specific thing that we found just in Bulgaria. It was a really unusual, and they've recreated it and made those for sale for people. And it's I mean, that part of it's hugely flattering. And I think the character has lasted and in people's minds more than the movie has, in a way, which is it's an interesting thing. I mean, but again, that's that the killer of Babyface. That was my jumping off point. That was my into the movie, and what I got excited about. And the interesting thing is, and not to dissuade anyone from watching it, but it's really not it's not what you would call a slasher movie in the execution or structure that a slasher movie normally has. I think it's got in some ways more of a kinship, to Texas Chainsaw Massacre in
Texas
just this.
Chainsaw,
If Leatherface is a slasher, then Babyface is a slasher. But it's not like they are stalking individuals and then killing them. It's like wholesale mass slaughter for these guys.
Well, right. I mean, you both took these tropes and turned them upside down. And there's one moment in the film, which I'm not going to spoil, that still is just like the what the moment. I mean, to the point where you kind of catch your breath and your blood runs really cold. And when you see it, you'll know it. It's great.
That was a nice thing, because I always knew from the moment that Scow wrote that scene exactly how it should play and that it was going to work. And it's always nice when you know that, and it actually is that you're right about it, because there are so many things that you feel in your gut that don't land with an audience for one reason or another. But that moment always sticks with people, which we aren't saying here, but watch the movie and you'll know it. And you'll know it. Yeah.
And so being a fan of the Dead Hate the Living, once I saw this film back in 2008 when it came out,
9.
Nine. 9. Made in 2009. Okay,
no,
2008 came out 2009.
Shot, yeah, exactly. Shot in 2008.
Let's take that back and start over with that, Chris. I didn't mean to step on you.
Well, the copyright I noticed earlier was, I think it said 2008 somewhere. But so seeing it again last night, it looks like it was a really well knowledgeable director who finally got to play with the toys in the sandbox that you always dream of. So going back to like your first film, it's a full moon film. You have a lot of static shots because you have to move fast. You don't have a lot of time. You probably had less than 10 days to shoot it. And this time around, like seeing the advancement of that. And now you have a lot more to play with. What was it that like really gave you a really good education from that point to that point? Was it being behind the scenes on all these huge movies and seeing all the toys that they played with and watching those directors? Kind of discuss that progression of how badass you became on that second film.
Well, the thing is, when you're working on these budgets and they're low comparatively to what big movies are, of course. Mm-hmm. So you're always trying to do your best and everything. With that, you hit the nail on the head. After I did Dead Hate the Living, and then I didn't direct for a while, I ended up doing a lot of behind the scenes features for big movies. We did The Usual Suspects. We did the X-Men films. We did Superman. I did Spider-Man 2. I did Kingdom of Heaven. So I feel like what happened was I went to graduate school in a way, got paid to do it, and my professors were Sam Raimi, Ridley Scott, Andrew Adamson, Bryan Singer, these guys who were really at the top of their game and working on massive budgets. I mean, to be able to sit there on a set, very fortunate for me, of a $200 million movie and see how it goes down and see what the director does and realize that, it's really not that different. Budget wise, the director is doing the same thing. It's just they've got more time, more money, more toys. So the lower the budget, the more inventive you have to be. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes you have people who won't let you do certain things. Or like, oh, if you set up to move the camera, that's going to take too long. You got to move forward and stuff like that. And that's when your skills in negotiation and bartering come into play to try to get as much as you can. You're not going to get everything that you want, but hopefully enough. But, you know, in the end, even if you have that footage, when you're working for a studio, especially, well, it's not just like, oh, okay, well, then go cut the movie. You know what you're doing. You're an editor. No, they give you an editor. And if you have the wrong editor, the stuff will just lay there. There's no life to it. You get the right people to support you and everything. And sometimes that's people that you choose. Sometimes it's people that the studio is comfortable with. You get lucky. But it's always that's the reality is, unless you really are doing it in an auteurist way, which, you know, Matt, you can probably talk to a little bit about, because the way Joe has worked on his films and stuff, it seems like he's got a lot of creative control when he's doing this, potentially more so than if when I'm working for a studio. So those battles might be easier to win. But, you know, again, rarely have I heard anyone who says, yeah, I got absolutely everything I wanted. I had all the time in the world, and this is exactly the way I wanted the movie. It's perfect. There's always stuff you want to change.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly it. It changes with budgets for sure. In the case of people I've produced for, like Joe, or when I'm directing, it's always been very, very low or micro, and you do have more leeway, you know, I think, and creative control and control over the time being spent on a given setup or set piece or whatever, you know.
Right. But I will say this, you know, to Matt's defense, sometimes having the lower budget, less crew and everything really allows you to really shine and be creative. And his movie, which still hasn't come out yet, which I think is a huge crime, which is Dementia Part 2, which I think is like this really unsung gem that people have not gotten to see. And once that comes out and you fill in people on how it was made, I think they're going to be absolutely blown away.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. I mean,
there's no release on it yet then, Matt, huh?
No, we're still talking to some people. The initial sort of push to get it released was tough, because it's a very short feature, and it's black and white, and it's a horror comedy. So you just throw all those things together, and I think even some of the bigger, small genre label distributors are maybe frightened of it is too strong a word, but nervous about that. And there's somebody looking at it now, though, But to get back to the point and relate it to what you're talking about, Dave, yeah, we did have freedom there, but it's a trade-off. It's like less money means less time, and you're sort of always looking at the clock yourself. You're almost your own AD. Everyone's an AD on a really small movie like that, because you're like, we got to get this shit done. But then, you know, more money can mean a little more time, but then you also have a lot of people you're contending with then, and more time gets put into people. So it's a trade-off, and I have yet to, whether I've been producing for another director like Joe, or whether I have been doing my own thing, you know, like I did with Mike on Dementia 2, there's never a perfect scenario. You're just like, there's got to be, you know, a way to. My preference, if I had to state it, would be having more control, you know, and the smaller.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes a really, you know, a small budget and a small crew, while to your point, you're always racing the clock. There's almost more of a kind of a jazz approach to it, you know, because you don't have 100 people breathing down your back going, okay, that shot's done, moving on. You're like, but wait, what if we did it this way? You know, and I think people are more apt to respond favorably to that. But yeah, I mean, it's controlled chaos any way you look at it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the thing is too. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I think when in the independent world as opposed to working with a studio, regardless of what the budget is, you have that control factor is a thing. It's just you have less people to answer to, and it does allow you. It allows you to try something very quickly, and I think because of the nature of those schedules, you have to, you people look to you more and what your gut is if it's good and or not, instead of, well, let's debate this and let's talk about it, and then you suck the life out of it and it's time to move on because they've talked it to death. And that's the thing too, the more producers you have and stuff like that, the more agendas they have that might not be in sync with the movie you're trying to make.
Yeah, right. That's so true. Yeah, and these days even small movies have, I mean, 20, 25 producers, and it's like, okay, that's great. You all have ideas, but we have no time here.
It's like it's just like we're making $1 million movie. Someone like, I'll sink in 10 grand. Oh, but I gotta say now, and I want a cameo in the movie now. I mean, there are literally productions that are fucking funding their movies through Indiegogo by selling off roles to unprofessionals. To me, it's fine, but that's not the way to make a movie, and you are compromised from the get-go right there.
It seems like the best scenario is not doing that. And also, well, I really like what Sean said about the sort of improvisation, the jazz analogy is really, that's so true when you have to work against the clock on a micro budget movie. But what really seems to work, the perfect cocktail, is like, even if you don't have a lot of pre-production time, plan every single thing you possibly can. And I know some directors don't like to do that. They like to get in and really like feel things out. But for me, it's always seemed the case that the more you plan and really figure out all those little things, when you do have to improvise quickly and move like a jazz musician, it's still going to feel like you aesthetically like you want. It's still going to be in that wheelhouse, right?
100% agree. Like Hills Run Red was a situation where I planned and I did storyboards and everything else, but by the time we actually got to shoot, none of those things were worth anything. They weren't. So like,
but it feels one of the things I was going to say earlier is it feels one of a whole. Like aesthetically, it all feels very smooth.
Yeah, thank you. But with Tales of Halloween, my DP and I planned everything. We knew where the location was. We had it all down pat. So when you inevitably run out of time to do certain things, you can look at it, change it very quickly, and then adapt. And that, to me, that's why I like to me, the more planning you have, the more you have figured out before you shoot, the easier it is to adapt when things go wrong.
And that's how you become a good producer. That's how you become a good filmmaker. Is learning how to you make the mistakes early on, and then a good producer is going to be the one that anticipates all of the problems before they become a problem. And that's that is when you start becoming a good producer. And you may never become that, even if you make 1 million movies. But it's always an ongoing process because there's so many different kinds of issues that can come up on a film.
Well, perfect example, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, Christian, and you as the producer, the director could be super prepared or something, but you might have something like, look, this actor needs to get out of here, so you're going to have to shoot him out. And he was like going, but I'm all set up to do this. It's like, no, change the whole lighting and where you're shooting now so we can shoot this actor out. And it totally messes up the director's plan, and then they have to give up something. But it's like sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Sometimes you might get some magic out of that or some. Yeah, but usually how you anticipate that is making sure that the actor is completely scheduled for that day. And if they have an issue, they better tell you immediately immediately when they learn about it. So. And then you try to work with them to see if you can juggle the schedule. And if you can't, then you got to keep them on set and tell them they can't do whatever they need to do.
I mean, bottom line is, as the director, especially, You just got to keep people moving.
Yeah.
If they see you stop and like go, if they lose confidence that you have a handle on things, no matter how chaotic it seems, that's the death. That's the death. If you lose your crew and their confidence in you and what you're doing, then it's really tough.
And no one's going to care. No one's going to give their passion. No one's going to strive to get things done quickly and with passion. So.
Yeah, it's in that moment where you realize that the actor's got to leave and you're going to have to turn around to get them, and it's going to be a 45-minute lighting setup, and then you got to go back to the other one. You're like, you
killed hours, yeah.
Yeah, and you have that moment where you're like, you just want to scream, or you want to be like, oh no, but you have to just keep moving forward and be like, there's no way around. Okay, there's no way around this. We got to do it. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean,
and then maintain that confidence, like you said, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, it's undeniably an uphill battle. I mean, from concept to development, and then you're going to make the movie 3 times when you write it, when you shoot it, and when you edit it. And then, let's be honest, when the score is applied to it, that's when it really is starting to come together.
And when you market it.
Then,
and marketing too.
Well, no, it's and the marketing at this point is tied into the very development of the project. So going through all of this, you're now at that point where the movie is going to now be seen by the public, and literally art becomes art once it's experienced, right? So like for you, Dave, in regards to looking at Hills Run Red and all of the ideas that you guys brought to bear, as fucked up as they are, which I love, what were your thoughts and feelings, with the audience response when the film was first released?
In person, when I got to see it in theater with an audience, it was really exciting because they were reacting, they were laughing, they were screaming, they were growing, they were like covering their eyes, and all the stuff that you want to see. When what's very difficult is when it comes out and you are just sitting at home. And part of the thing that I've honestly really learned to do is not, at least I need to get a little distance from the movie and me.
Right.
So I don't I don't look at reviews, and I try not to for about 6 months. Because it bothered me a lot on the first film. The reviews were not good. There have been some really nasty reviews on everything that I've done. There was some really nasty reviews of Hills. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. Oh, it's overhyped. It was this, it was that. Everyone said it was the second coming, and it's not. And it's like, well, I have no control of how the press is going to spin something. I'm just making the movie. But and then now when you look back at it, the stuff, to me, it's like, take criticism for what it is and apply those things to the next thing. To me, it's always about it's all about learning. Yeah. And the thing is, now look, we're in we've been since the 90s now, where we're in an era that people, directors, filmmakers rarely get the chance to grow. I mean, if you look at like Cronenberg's movies, was Scanners the first time he was really taken notice, especially in the States, really, like on a bigger level in horror? That was his 5th movie. Not everyone, and look at you get Romero, and he gets Night of the Living Dead, and then he is cursed for the rest of his career with that movie, his first movie, which he's probably looking at and going, well, I would do that different. I don't have, that's not so hot, and that's not great, but now it seems like you have this one shot, and if your film doesn't open theatrically and make $1 billion, or used to when people could go to the theaters, that's why The Wretched is such a cool story. Here's this movie that I believe was around $1 million budget or something, and now it's made its money back just through drive-ins, and I think they said just through drive-ins it's made $1 million. That's not even
incredible.
The video on demand rentals and everything else that it's probably had as well. That's pretty cool. But you know what? I think all of us here can sit here and attest. Do you know how hard it is to get $1 million for a budget now?
Well, And it took them about 3 or 4 years to get that movie made and out. Because I was talking to Brett, Sean, you were, I'm sure, too, that long ago. I think 2016, 2017, he was still shooting stuff.
Yeah,
Sean,
I
okay.
Yeah, I actually haven't talked to Brett, I think, since Deadheads was released, and I believe it premiered at Scream Fest so many years ago at this point.
2012 or 13, 2012.
Yeah, it's been some time. So I think that's kind of around the last time I talked to those guys. So it was, it was
really?
it was a pleasant surprise for me to find out that, while we're supposed to be like the authority on horror, it does not mean I know everything that's going on. Far from it.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's this movie called The Wretched in drive-ins, and I'm like, well, that's cool. Who made this movie? And he's like, oh, the Pierce brothers, and I was like, oh, like the Deadhead Pierce brothers. I'm like, that's super great. So it's been
totally different.
It's been super exciting for me to see. Though I haven't seen the film yet, I need to go to Mission Tiki Drive-In apparently and check this thing out.
Yeah, let's go.
But yeah, like, but I mean, look, I think it's great, so I don't know. I mean, what can I say? It's 2020. Like any story of success during these challenging times for independent filmmakers is amazing.
Yeah. And the fact that it's a horror movie that did it once again is really, for me, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find that. We always strive and maybe get a little bit of a what is it, a writer's block when you're trying to figure out that special idea. You want to write something that doesn't require a lot of money, and what is that special idea that's going to really make it work and stand out? Do you feel that way, Dave? Do you do a lot of writing? I'm not sure if you do. You do sometimes, right?
I dabble. I wouldn't say I'm the most disciplined writer. I mean, I've talked to Matt a lot and Sean a lot about writing and ideas and stuff like that. And I'm envious because Matt's one of these fuckers who are like, oh yeah, we wrote the script in 5 days, and like,
that's one example.
Matt does that. Matt does that. This is very true. He's going to downplay it, but
I'll say this. I think, but that's to my detriment because, the bad part of this industry and it's one of the few bad things about being in this group, in the circle of really talented people and everything, and seeing what everyone's doing is, I have tended to, and people find it funny when they go, well, it sure doesn't look like it in your movies, but I really tend to overthink, like, oh, is this the right idea? Is this what I should be doing now? What, it's very hard if you're trying to direct the path of your career, because you never know what's going to connect and what's not going to connect with money. You just don't know. You might be into it and people might go, I don't give a shit about this. Who cares? Yeah. So I think it's more important to, in some ways, do than overthink it. It's like, get it out, and then at least you got it. Then it's there. You can look at it, and then you can decide. But I think
the fans can decide. Yeah.
But even just in the writing aspect of it, I think the thing that slowed me down is that I think about not just the story, but I think about, like, okay, well, if I get to make this and this comes out, what trajectory is it going to put me on? Because everyone gets so easily labeled as one type of, even in the genre, they get labeled like, I've had meetings like, oh, well, you're not right for this. You're a slasher movie guy. As if now you're not just typecast being a horror director. Now you're typecast as being a subcategory horror director, and people in the genre think that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a mind blower. It's like, okay, so
right, yeah. I have the same issue. I get hung up on similar things, and especially like I think about, well, what is this? Where would this take me if I did this? But also, I just get hung up in beats of the. I mean, I think my issue is I edit too much as I go, and I want to be like Larry Cohen. I want to have an idea and just dump it, and then it's like, okay, it's pretty good. Let's go. But it's tough.
Yeah,
really hard.
he was a master at that, just like the letting the brain just flow. And
Yeah.
I think he would dictate everything to his secretary
He
too.
did. He
Yeah,
recorded it. He
everything.
recorded.
Oh,
He
recorded it.
recorded
Okay.
it, and then she would type it out. And the thing was, but the one thing Larry Cohen was a master of the high concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
guy
yeah.
just knew. He knew a good concept.
Yeah.
You
He was
know,
like, here's this concept, everything else will follow.
and
And
that's so much of the stuff that you sort of chase now, because now, especially if you're a low budget film, I mean, there's 100 low budget movies, horror movies coming out. It seems like almost every week,
Yeah.
of all different sizes and ranges and stuff like that. So it's like, well, how do you make yourself stand out from the pack? I will say this though, luckily I do have people like Matt who have been really generous with their time as sounding boards, and Sean too. We've all talked about ideas and stuff like that and talked them out, and that's helpful, because the one thing is, there used to be the sense floating out there of competition between a lot of us and everything, whether it was sort of status of budget level that you're working at or whatever. To me, thankfully, that honestly is kind of gone, because it's just now it's like I just want to make stuff. I just want to make stuff that I think is cool, that has a quality level to it, and the expectations like, oh well, I'm going to be in 4,000 theaters and stuff like that is less of an importance and less of a reality now. So when we got into this and we were inspired, the way film was and the way filmmaking was and stuff was drastically different than it is now. Not the mechanics of it, but so much of it in the perception of people, and the business side of it is completely different now. So,
and shooting on film, back then, I probably worked on my first film in 1997, and that was one of the first like digital. We shot on. I didn't shoot. I was the sound guy, but we did it on beta. And so that was like the changing of the guard, and it was like, now it's been 23 years or something since that happened. But when I was going to school, and Dave, you too, Sean, I'm sure you didn't go to film school, but back then all of us were involved in one way, shape, or form. You kind of had that idea. Yeah, it was like a film, and you had a fucking...
So did you, Dave. So did you.
And you had a film, and you had to have a budget, and you had to have all the money in the world to make that film. And now we can shoot on anything, and that's what, and that's also
But you learn. You learn.
Yes.
All you need, what you need is a good story. That's what you need.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I mean the proliferation of affordable tech that has allowed aspiring filmmakers to just go out and shoot stuff is amazing. That's certainly the landscape has certainly changed because of that. But at the same point, I think the double-edged sword aspect of it is there's a lot of very green filmmakers out there that maybe haven't honed their skill to the level that they'd like yet. But they are taking those early projects that they made, and those are getting distributed. And since we're speaking about the horror genre itself, to Dave's point earlier, meaning that so many titles seem to be constantly being released, I think it's often hard to sift through that for people and find really good films, really good horror films. Because for every Exorcist, there's a million Exorcist knockoffs, and the list goes on. I mean, I just think people need to keep shooting because that's what you do as an artist at the end of the day. And what that end result is going to be, I think none of us know really. I mean, we have an idea, hopefully, if we've spent some time in pre-production and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it could be drastically different than what you'd intended.
I think a lot of things too. I think,
and maybe sometimes for the good.
Yeah, but I think especially in our social media age and everything, that status has become more important than doing the work. What status are you at?
Yeah, I really have no. Yeah.
But it's made that kind of ugly.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. Yeah, and I mean, I have no interest in that. Certainly at this point in my career, and haven't for some time. if anything that we've watched with COVID, I think a lot of people have reconnected. And I think a lot of people have had time to take some inventory in regards to what's really important to them. And what were those things for all of us here, probably. And it was making art. It wasn't about, having to do the press cycle. It wasn't about having to be on the red carpet. It wasn't about all of these things. And, we're able to, I think, really kind of just simplify at this point. And additionally, there's also this weird thing to bring up, Dave, and you're talking about social media and just that film conversation, etc. And I think we've all seen this. There's this conception out there that people that work in film also have a Maserati and live in Hollywood Hills behind a gate. And I can say that this is 99.9% not correct. Everybody works very, very hard, not only to get these movies made, which always seems an uphill battle, but just to even survive as a human being on the day to day. Everybody works, Dave, when you're not directing, you're editing.
Oh yeah.
The same thing could be said for Matt. The same thing could be said for Chris, who's produced a lot of movies. But Chris, last year, how many you were working like a crazy person. You were working 20 hours a day, and you weren't. And every time I talked to you, you were so tired. And what are you doing? You're like, I'm working straight for the next 6 weeks,
Oh, and I'm putting a book together and the 2 sequels too.
And I'm putting it together and 2 sequels, and also Chris doesn't have a Maserati, so I think it's one of those things where
because you stole it, Sean. You stole it.
I did.
He still has the seat from it. That's what he's sitting on.
But I'll say this.
Taking it all the way back, Matt. Nice.
Hey, okay. I have a question. Not to completely change the subject, but the movie poster within the movie, the Hills Run Red poster, Concannon's poster.
Yeah.
Do you still have that, Dave? Do you have that poster?
Which one? Do you mean the? Is it? Hold on. Is it this one that you're talking about?
Wait, I can't see it. Pull it back a little bit. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that
I do.
Sleeve. That's awesome.
This is
so you can choose that as your sleeve.
Yeah, we have a reverse cover on the Blu-ray, so you can have the original poster, or you can have Cannon's, the director within the movie, his poster art for his.
We can all have that poster now.
Yeah,
we can all have it. Because I love that. That was something I forgot about rewatching the movie last night.
I have that painting, and I have the Italian.
Yeah, that's cool.
In its house too.
Well, we need to get Dave to shoot that on a really big negative, so we can take it to a poster printing facility and get 4x6 foot French Grand versions made of it.
Oh, that was
frame that shit.
That'd
be really cool.
I think I do have the one from the movie. I believe. I'm not exact. I'd have to look. I have all the posters that this writer and artist Stephen Romano created for a project that he was doing that was called Shock Express, or was it Shock Express or something? It's an art book.
Okay. We licensed all the art in the movie.
We licensed all those posters, so all the posters from the apartments and everything I still have those.
So when you're 8,
that's amazing.
When you're 80 and they wheel you out to Fangoria 157, Parker, that's what you'll be signing,
Decker will be wheeling me out.
Yeah, Decker's
gonna. So we'll both be wheeled out together there, Dave.
So, who am I? What? Hills? What?
Hills? What? So getting back into our conversation, we had to get Sean back in because he was a little frozen there. Sorry, everyone. I kind of want to get into, all of us have had to survive in this industry by doing many different jobs. Let's discuss that a little more, because how difficult is it to really, you come to Hollywood, you want to be a director or an actor and a director or whatever. How do you survive if you only do direct one movie a year, one movie every couple of years? Well, Dave, let's start with you.
I learned how to edit. I learned another skill that I fell in love with, that I like directing the most and doing movies, but I really do enjoy editing. I love putting things together and creating moments and effective scenes and everything else. So for me it was that. Other people, it's obviously writing. We know a lot of people who just crank out and write scripts, and that's how they survive. I think it's different for everyone. So, but I was lucky to be able to find something that is still relatively needed, because it's not like they always, are in demand for directors that are only making a movie every couple years, unfortunately, because it does take a long time. It is really tough. It's very competitive out there, especially if you're going out for projects, and it's even harder when you're just trying to get a project off the ground. So yeah, for me it was editing.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, yeah.
And Matt, so how about you? Like, how have you had to gone through this world surviving, and and what did you come to LA for? You didn't grow up here, I don't think, right?
No, I moved here from I went to acting school. I mean, where I am now is I'm exactly where Dave is, and I feel exactly the same way he does. I really love editing, and I do that as my job between projects. But I went to acting school, and then right out of college, out of acting school, I went to New York, and because it's kind of drilled into your head at most acting schools. I'm not so sure about now, but when I was in school, that you have to start in the theater. You have to go to New York first. And I grew up a huge fan of genre films and knew I wanted to end up doing that. But I guess, and at that time thought I just wanted to act. That's it. That's what I got into. And but you get, it's really drilled in your head, and if you have a lack of confidence like I did back then and still sometimes struggle with, you sort of just believe things people tell you, and you and so I was like, I have to go to New York. I have to start in the theater. So I went to New York, was there for 4 years, and then got my first acting role in a really small indie feature that was cast out of New York but shot in North Carolina. That film played in a festival out here in LA, and I managed to get like a couple of meetings with agencies when I came out here for a festival. And one of the agents was interested, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going out there. And then moved out here, and it was like, what happened to, I was, obviously staying in touch with what was happening in the horror scene and watching movies, and I was like, why am I not pursuing that full on? Like, why am I not going after those auditions? So I started doing that, and then started getting stuff, and then started producing stuff, and then it's a domino effect. I was acting horror movies, and started producing them, and then realized, I always wanted to direct too. So it all rolled out that way.
And getting on set and being in it is the main thing. You have to. That's the way to learn. Even trying to go to school, you're not going to learn as much. No, and
when you really have to, it really boils down to, you have to listen to. Sometimes it's really hard to listen to yourself and discover what it is you really want to do. That in itself can be a really hard thing. Yeah. And I one day I don't remember exactly the scenario, but I was just sitting there and I was like, wait, what happened to I was probably watching, something I really enjoyed, like Halloween or some classic horror movie. And I was like, what happened to wanting to do just that? And that's what I really love. And so pursued those auditions, and I've done plenty of bad horror movies as an actor.
And some good ones.
And some fun ones.
And some good ones.
It's thank you.
And Sean, go ahead, Matt. Oh, okay.
No, that's it. I'm just rambling.
And so, Sean, not a lot of people know all of the details. I mean, you've gone through a million careers. Of you've been a model at some point. You've been a musician, a rock star.
That's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen the photo, Calvin Klein photo of you.
Mid '90s were interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, I think I was always a storyteller. I was writing short stories and really ridiculous novels. Even as a preteen and a teenager, and had gone to UCLA for journalism for a bit. Because I was interested, and around '97, I had a website where I was, kind of writing horror news, but I was very green. And Joe Senna, who now runs the Fourth Castle brand, and does MC Toys and a bunch of things, but at the time he worked for Creation Entertainment, which was the the company that put on all the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors conventions. And Joe had reached out to me and he said, he's like, hey, he's like, I see that you're writing this, this news stuff on your little website. I was like, thanks, Joe. Didn't know him. He's like, I've got this thing called Dungeon of Darkness. I got more traffic than you. Would you care to come write for me? He's like, it may turn into something else. So I'm sure. I mean, I was writing it anyway, right? And it was cool to meet somebody else that was, a like-minded horror nerd, essentially.
Right.
And essentially within 3 months, that turned into a news editor position and staff writer at Horror Online for Universal Studios. Joe had started that there, which that website was kind of the progenitor of all of the stuff that we've seen since, to a large extent, whether that be Fangoria.com or Bloody Disgusting or Dread Central or whatnot. So I was really, really, really lucky to be able to just cut my teeth and be shepherded there by some really caring and astute people, because I was just a newbie, literally. I think my first interview was with like Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I was like, oh my God, it's Buffy. Oh, wow. What do I do? Yeah.
That way to throw you right
there you go. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It was like the Four Seasons, the whole press junket deal, you know how it goes. And then she had her assistant like send a dozen red roses to the Universal office the next day. So everybody thought there was something going on with me and Buffy, which I thought was hilarious.
Hell yeah.
I was like, I mean, I wish the story ended better. Like I could say, yes, it was, but no, it wasn't. But no, I worked there for about 5 years, until there was a buyout. Vivendi came in and bought Seagram's, which owned Universal, and they didn't really understand the new media department at the time, meaning the internet. So I was fortunate enough to go, work with Tony Timpone and Michael Gingold at Fangoria for about 7 years, and then Dread Central for another 10. So essentially throughout all of that, being a journalist, and like I got, I was really inspired by what Dave was saying earlier, in the sense that while he was doing all the EPK work on these big budget films, that he was able to, witness how those productions went down. So being a journalist that has been lucky enough to travel to film set around the world, whether that be, tiny little movies like Wicked Lake, to Dave's point, or, Godzilla, you learn a lot. And I always had a love for film. Like to Matt Mercer's point, Halloween blew me away as a kid. We certainly all talked about that in Chris's book.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and so I've been lucky enough to produce some movies that are neither maybe here or there or somewhere in the middle, and also do some.
But they're out there.
They're out there, and also do some work with some great people though on some other projects as well that I'm proud of. And to Dave's point, it's about the art, and I think it's about the journey, and the projects are great, but I think it's the relationships that you make during those projects, and those friendships that you make. I mean, I think everybody here in this room met because of film. Like all four of us on this podcast met because of film, and because of our shared interest in film. And that was all years ago. So it's love. I mean, I think for me, I think that's the reward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doing the work. For me, it's like there's nothing better than being on set.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I love it. I love the energy of it. As long as you're doing something, visiting someone else's set, it's like 2 hours at tops, and then it's
just in the way.
You're just like sitting
right.
in the back, trying to stay out of the way.
Yeah.
But still, then you get to watch some fascinating things go down, and which is very cool too.
So Dave, I know this is one of the things that we covered on the exhaustive and hopefully highly entertaining extras on the Hills Run Red Blu-ray, which is coming out this Tuesday.
Very entertaining.
And I'm going to be watching that thing, which I'm going to be watching tonight, because again, you were kind enough to deliver a copy over to me pre-release. But we did touch on this in one of our interviews, and the question was, are we ever going to see possibly a sequel to Hills Run Red? Because again, this film has got a cult following. Babyface is a really popular character, and it's something I'm certainly interested in.
Yeah, we did talk about it a little bit in the extras. It doesn't seem like a likelihood for a number of reasons. Warner Premiere doesn't exist anymore in the Warner Brothers division. It's now something else. Dark Castle and Silver Pictures is no longer affiliated with Warner Brothers. So I really don't know. I assume Warner Brothers in some form has the rights to the movie.
Right.
Now I know they don't plan on doing anything with it, but I think it's probably rare that they would just sell off a property like that. It's probably not unheard of, but it's I wouldn't know. I mean, if they got several 100,000 people all blasting them asking for it, then maybe they probably go, "What is this movie? Do we own this?"
What is this?
No, yeah, exactly. Is that in our catalog?
So I don't know. I mean, Scow and I have talked about it a little bit before, and I think now, because so much time has gone on, we're just really happy that we're having the opportunity for people to see the movie again, see it in the sort of best light, hear all the stories that we have and everything. And our position is like, well, we're still around. We could come up with something else. No, look, I love the babyface character, and I know Scout says he always had a plan on where he would take it. I never really had a concrete one of what to do. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I just think that it's like, well, I can do a different slasher movie if that I want to do all different kinds of genre movies. So I'd certainly be open to it, but I think it's more of a complicated business thing to start with.
Right.
And and the other question that always keeps coming up is this the quote unquote director's cut, which we do address in there. And I don't want to turn anyone off. Look, and this is not self-depreciating. If you don't like the movie, the chances are you'll like the extras, because it really does go through the steps of making a low budget movie, the good and the bad. It's pretty transparent that way.
Yeah. Was that always the plan, to make them that detailed, or did you go in and you were like, wow, we're just talking here and we're getting a lot of great stuff? Like, was the plan to be that, as Sean put it, exhaustive? Because I love that detail.
Well, Rob and I were kind of known for that. I mean,
yeah,
the Superman Returns documentary was almost 4 hours long.
Right.
It's like at a certain point, when it just becomes space on a disc, if you have the time, and we did all these extras while in quarantine. We created them all in quarantine. So for us, it was like, well, we have all this stuff, why not use it? And then and then the stuff that we didn't use, I've been releasing as just like little snippets on like Facebook. Like
that's been fun.
Little spare parts things that just didn't fit for one reason or another. But we explained, so I'll just say the cut of the movie is the cut that was released. It's the R-rated cut.
Yeah.
We go into detail on why it's not the director's cut and what was cut out, and you will see certain things that were edited out. But I will say this: the reason that it's not even been a discussion of the director's cut, and I know I've read some comments where it's like, there's no reason not to release it. Well, there is. The quote unquote director's cut was never finished. It exists as an output from a low res version of the Avid. So it was never conformed. It was never mixed. It was never color timed. It was never finished in that sense. It was never scored.
No music,
It's not scored. So it would cost tens of thousands of dollars, if not potentially more, to finish that version. And for Warner Brothers, for a title that's 11 years old, that isn't, a massive big title, it makes the spending of the money would make no sense. And Scream Factory certainly doesn't have the money.
Same for them,
to spend that kind of money.
Well, no, I mean it absolutely comes down to, somebody crunching the numbers, and oftentimes those people that are crunching the numbers are not really aware of a fan base of a film, an older film that they may have in their catalog. So they don't, they're not like, they don't have any personal attachment to say, oh, well, this thing should still be done. They're just going to look at the numbers and say, well, maybe only this amount of physical copies are going to move, and we don't know how this is going to do on VOD. So we don't know if we can really justify the amount of money it's going to cost to go ahead and take this missing footage. Chris knows what I'm talking about, and maybe put this back into this film from 1988 or 1989, and re-release it, even though the fans really want it, and even though the people behind that movie might really want this to happen too. So things, it's an uphill battle at the end of the day, and I think
you have
sometimes,
to
sometimes fans, don't. I think they don't take that into consideration. They're just like, well, we want this stuff and it exists. So why can't we have it?
It's just,
and the answer,
you just got to hit a button, right? You just hit a button.
I just think probably the way it's been expressed in other interviews and stuff. Yeah, we cut 10 minutes out and stuff like that, but they don't figure out all the processes of post that you have to do to actually have a movie finished. And it's not like they can just give me the footage and I can finish it at home. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Do you know where the elements are, or if they even exist?
It's in a vault. It's in the Warner Brothers vault.
Okay. So know that it's there. Okay.
So it's. I mean, it's somewhere there and everything. But again, I think but that's another reason why we put so much extra effort with the bonus features. I don't think anyone's going to feel cheated when they're getting an 81-minute movie. An 81-minute movie, and they're 6.5 hours.
No, they're not. They're gonna be really happy about it. And to speak to the director's cut also, and that lost quote unquote footage that everybody talks about. We touched on this for a second, Dave and I, just in regards to like how ironic it is that The Hills Run Red unto itself is so meta in that it's about people trying to find a lost movie, and now we're re-releasing a movie about people trying to find a lost movie who are trying to find a lost movie within that movie.
Right.
And this is great that because this is one of the main conversations I wanted to have with you. So instead of touching upon what we just talked about, I want to discuss, and you probably discussed this on the Blu-ray, but give me a little generalized idea of why. What your vision, because I remember telling you a couple of years ago, going, I had an issue here and here, and that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. And why is that? And you said, oh, okay, and I don't remember the conversation. It was mostly about the drug scene in the beginning of the girl and her rehab, and it was like 30 seconds, and okay, she's rehabbed, and I was like, oh, okay, so what? Tell me about that a little bit, and because you shot a lot more, right?
The rehab?
Yeah.
No, because it was always designed to be a montage.
Okay.
Nobody wants to watch somebody throw up for 7 days straight, Chris. That's a long movie.
No. Or she could, whatever.
We talk. Scout and I talk about it. I should have added a line in there, but I will say this, and what I'm going to say right now is a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. Skip this part for a minute or put me on mute. I'll give a thumbs up when I'm done.
Okay.
So starting right now, mute it if you don't want to have this spoiled. She's acting. She's an actress. She is duping them the entire time, including being a junkie.
Yeah, okay.
It's all bullshit. So that's why that thing is short and sweet. And the person trying to get her off drugs is a filmmaker, and he is experiencing it through a cinematic montage.
Okay.
And it was a little lost in translation.
Okay.
There you go.
That was a great. That was a great explanation. I love that.
Yeah.
And otherwise, like I've always loved the film. It was just because why? Because unfortunately, somebody I lived with was a junkie for about 6 months, and I had to, kind of help them get through it and all that. And so anytime, back then when I was watching movies and I saw something like that, I'd be like, oh, well, that was kind of quick. What was that about?
Sure.
Why was that so quick? Or, or seeing like the movie like Traffic, which I could not stand that movie, but Hills Runner, it's fantastic. But either way, it was just that moment in that scene, and it was only 45 seconds.
Did you also have a issue with David Scows the Crow, in which he reforms a junkie just by touching her arms?
No, that's supernatural.
No
it's
problem.
fine.
Yeah, of course.
You can explain away anything with that.
Yeah.
And so when you guys were, let's just we'll start to wrap this up. One thing I want to ask you, I'm sure you were a William Sadler fan before this movie.
Absolutely.
What was the one movie or maybe Tales from the Crypt or something that you saw that you were like, I have to have William Sadler for this movie?
Sadler, I mean, I loved genre-wise, I loved him in Demon Knight, and I love him in Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I loved him in Trespass.
Okay.
Any of the Walter Hill movies that he's been in, I've been such a fan of. I loved, he's Shawshank,
Mm-hmm.
So good.
He's so great in that. I don't know why I got it in my head. Die Hard 2. I don't know why I got it in my head, but it was always Bill Sadler for me. He was my first choice. We had others as backup and stuff like that, but luckily because he had been in a bunch of Joel Silver movies, it was not a difficult thing.
It was easy for him to say yes.
Yeah, because it was easy for more importantly, it was easy for Joel to say yes because he liked him.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I did, that's the thing. I didn't. Jeffrey Combs had just reprised his role for Return to House on Haunted Hill. Mm-hmm. So as much as I love Jeff as an actor, I didn't want to go the just horror brand name actor. As good as so many of those actors are, I didn't want that, and I didn't get to choose all the cast, but he was definitely one that I did, and yeah. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've all kind of heard stories of Joel Silver and all that. I remember going back, dropping off something to his office as a PA one time back when he was on Warner Brothers lot.
Yep.
And this was before the Fangoria conventions that I had gone to, or anything that was like, make it like Monster Palooza, where they had, they have full size, monsters and stuff. Walking into his office, and in a glass case, there's the fucking Predator right there, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm inside this office."
He had the Predator, he had the Crypt Keeper, and a pinball. What pinball machine was it? It was something crazy. I don't know if it was a Tales from the Crypt one or if it was like a Die Hard one. I forget. But he had and I look, to be honest, I only got to meet Joel a couple times, and he was very nice. He was very complimentary. I mean, we were such small potatoes to him, but to me, it was like, this is the guy who gave us helped give us the Warriors, and gave us Streets of Fire, and Die Hard, all these
incredible movies. Yeah.
He was on. I think, is it Bruckheimer now would be as a producer alone, one of the last sort of name producers that you recognize now.
Yeah, Bruckheimer, maybe Grazer.
And Kevin Feige, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like, but Joel Silver was like it was like working with guy was a legend.
Yeah.
Legend.
I didn't get to go in all the way into the offices. The Crypt Keeper must have been a little further in or something.
And it was great because everyone in their office had these very large framed shadow boxes from their movies. So like it would be like, here's one from House of Wax, and there would be props from House of Wax, and the killer's wax face in there, or 13 Ghosts had, they were all different, but it was a very neat place.
Amazing.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, let's wrap this up. I want to thank Matt Mercer, Sean Decker, and Dave Parker. And please, everyone, make sure to check out The Hills Run Red. It comes out Tuesday. On Tuesday, June 16th, just in a few days.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, hopefully, I get to see you guys soon. As soon as we all don't have COVID-19 anymore, in about 2 years, we're getting beers.
And
Great.
Matt, quickly, who should people write to get Dementia Part 2 released? Do they have to start letting Scream Factory now?
Yeah, start lighting up Scream Factory and Sever, and any of those genre labels. Just hit them up and say, hey, you should look at Dementia 2 again. I mean, a couple of them, I wonder if they've even watched it, or hit up Boulder Light Pictures, our producers.
Oh, no, what are you guys waiting on? Come on.
Well, they've got
seriously, release that movie.
Another big drive-in hit. What's that?
Release the movie. Just release it.
For God's sake. Yeah, there's someone looking at it now. Someone new looking at it now, just as of this week. But man, it's been a process. But those guys are also pretty inundated right now because they just had Seems like Becky is doing pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, guys, thank you all, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
that was
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening to My Favorite Horror Movie. Please subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and catch our videos on YouTube. All of those links and ways to pick up our books are at myfavoritehorrormovie.com. My Favorite Horror Movie is a Black Vortex Cinema production. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon, evil ones.